Hello, I'm George Middleton, your host this evening on this podcast episode of Black Space Live. The topic of discussion for tonight is the Great Replacement Theory, Part 2. However, before we get started, I would like to take some time to encourage you to like, subscribe, and share this podcast. In other words, don't be selfish. Share the love. So we get ready to get started on part 2 of the Great Replacement Theory, but let's take some time real quick to have our star-studded panelists introduce themselves and invite them to share with you watchers and viewers and listeners anything that they feel they would like you to know. Let's begin with DeAndres.
Oh, you're gonna make me go first? Okay.
Beauty before age.
My name is DeAndres. I'm a graduate of Texas Southern. I'm also currently getting my master's. I have four beautiful children. Been married 16 years this year. Business owner, just all around busy woman. And I like to call myself a loyal sister, lover, and friend. Like, if I got you, I got you. If I don't, I don't.
No in between.
No in between.
Well, welcome, Beatrice.
Thank you.
Daniel, I ain't scared of you, the worldwide wolf, William.
Man, it's a pleasure to be back. I know I've been gone for a little bit. Y'all thought y'all was safe, but I'm back. I didn't disappear. I was just traveling a little bit, getting some things in order. Pleasure to be back. Looking forward to having this discussion.
Welcome back, Daniel. And Rock Soldier.
Hey, peace, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back. It's Rock. I'm currently in Raleigh, North Carolina. Trying to do some things here to help the community. I'm an insurance professional. Just took a VP of sales position with an insurance company here in Raleigh. Thank you. So I coach. I'm currently taking an NLP certification. I'm involved in disruptive coaching. Sometimes I do some consulting because I have like 30, 40 years of sales experience. As I said, I'm an insurance professional, property and casualty, commercial, life and health, and I'm a father. And I also have experience in community mobilization and community organization. So, and it's good to be back. Definitely looking forward to this, discussing this topic with you all.
Welcome back, Rock Soldier. And you'll notice that my setting is a little different tonight. Over my left shoulder is an advertisement I put on one of my first book signing events. I just released a children's book titled Kids Are Not Crayons. And I'm a therapist by day, and this book is a therapeutic tool to help parents proactively help their children form healthy self-identity and esteem. That's a very relevant topic in these days because we have identities coming from everywhere. We have messaging coming from social media, TV, music that are accessing the minds of our youth 24/7. Even in good two-parent stable households, trying to keep up with all the messaging that's assaulting our children it's a serious task. So this tool is used to give the parent a way of taking some of the power back in their children's self-development. It's available on Amazon, and we had a great time tonight. We did it a coffee shop titled Brown Skin Coffee. It's the first African American owned coffee shop in this part of Indiana, Brownsburg, Indiana. It's a cultural mecca. It's very diverse and eclectic. We do music and paint, spoken word. It's just a great area, and I wanted this to be my first place to celebrate my book.
Yes, yes.
Nice.
It was a great time.
Yeah,
So that being said, we're going to get back into it. This is a pickup from part two, and so instead of rehashing part two, I'm just going to. I think most people who tune in know what the Great Replacement Theory is, but just in short, the Great Replacement Theory is a conspiracy theory that states that non-white individuals are being brought into the United States and other Western countries to replace white voters to achieve a political agenda. It is often touted by anti-immigration groups, white supremacists, and others. According to experts that are studying this phenomenon, white supremacists argue that the influx of immigrants, people of color, which is a term I have significant issues with, more specifically, that they will lead to the extinction of the white race. So that's the general gist of it. It's much more, it can be much more complex than that, but we're just kind of going to deal with the bare bones. So I had a few questions listed out to help facilitate the discussion, and we're not limited to these questions. And we've got some great minds here, so I'm sure that this is going to go in directions I probably never even planned for. Because whenever I'm with you guys, all I got to do is sit back. That's all I got to do. So the first question is, how can the racial demographic Black community begin to protect itself from future mass murders motivated by the Great Replacement Theory? I'll call it GRT for short. And I'll just open it up, and anybody wants to pop in, go right ahead.
I want to hear what y'all have to say first.
Fair enough. I'm gonna go ahead and pop in because I am of the opinion that um nobody wants to die. And so there's a reason why we get sold on our heroes who are pacifist, our heroes who are nonviolent, or heroes who turn the other cheek. Um, I think it starts really it's a mindset first, and there's also a reason why those of us who tend to be more alpha, if you will, the ones who are willing to put hands on somebody if they have to protect their own, tend to be targeted and the first ones that they try to remove from the communities.
Yeah.
It goes back to the last discussion I was a part of, where economics is a huge part of it, right? Your alphas are the ones that say, I'm gonna get it by any means, and a lot of the times that any means requires something to do with the streets. And so um, part of the preparation is how can we create our own economy independent of theirs? For me, I think a lot of it has to be anything that has to go through them, they can turn off at any time. If our food has to go through them, they can turn off the food. If the water has to go through them, they can turn off the water. If the streets that we travel on for infrastructure purposes have to go through them, they just have to blockade that, right? So it goes back to that separation. Um, so for me, it's two parts. Internally, it's a mindset shift. How can we stop fighting each other long enough to understand who the enemy is? You know, there's the old African proverb that says, when two brothers fight, a stranger inherits the land. Um, we're spending so much time fighting each other and really being our own worst enemy. Internally, that's part of the challenge. And then, secondly, externally, what can we do to create our own infrastructure to kind of give ourselves an opportunity to have some sort of a chance in an internal struggle, right? I mean, we in essence, we are currently what you would consider prisoners of war behind enemy lines. And so at any given time, that can manifest into something that explodes. It goes back to my first statement. They have to know, it has to be it has to be known that force will be met with force. And I think a lot of the times force is met with protesting, force is met with marches and slogans and signs and T-shirts, but very rarely is force met with force. And I'm not necessarily saying we go out and we're violent. I'm just saying that we protect ourselves within the full extent of the law whenever possible, and up to at least the level of violence perpetrated on us. We should be willing and able and can pro- provide a position for ourselves to be able to protect ourselves up to the level of violence that's perpetrated against us.
I I agree. Um, I I don't like protests, y'all. I think they are pointless. I get so sick of seeing us with slogans and acronyms and organizations, and because everything always ends up being political and about money, and it never actually fixes anything. We see the mess that BLM is today. Um, but I totally agree that it's all about us really just arming ourselves and protecting ourselves and getting our own. It was funny because my grandma and my grandfather, they live in DC. They've always said that for them, in their opinion, integration was the worst thing to happen to Black people, because we had our own and we were thriving. Was it racially bad? Yes, but they remember having our own banks and things that they had no control over, that we owned and we ran, and we were unstoppable. That's why they were so scared of us becoming more than we are. And I find the GRT, right? It's so funny because the only scare tactic behind that is that they're scared of becoming minorities when they're doing that to themselves. The amount of mixed race families, we have a military background. When I tell you there are more white women in relationships and marriages with Black men creating mixed race babies, it's a phenomenon. It's crazy. So when they keep saying that we're trying to erase them, y'all doing it yourselves. It's You have this, you want these racially, and they're really doing it. It's so funny because they want these racially ambiguous children, and they're not paying attention to the fact that, okay, you're making these mixed babies, but these mixed babies are mixed babies who end up having more, mixed babies, who you're erasing your own race. You don't need us to do that. Bringing immigrants over here is not going to erase the white race. You're going to erase it all by yourself. Furthermore, if you look at the demographics in America, they were going to become the minority regardless. It's not just the people from Mexico and what they call, or what Orange called, bad countries or whatever. You have the Africans who come over here and live over here. To be fair, every country, I've lived in a lot of countries per the military, every country has a strong African community. So America is just one of those big bowls of soup that's so diverse. And when you try to say that, Black people or immigrants are trying to take over this country, so just say, you're scared that your white power is not going to be as powerful. That's pretty much what it is. But as long as we arm ourselves, I don't honestly know how we would be able to get our own, as far like I know we can grow our own food and whatnot. But the way the water system is set up in America, now, I've never seen a country literally take ownership of oceans and water the way they do. So that would be something we would really have to navigate. But I absolutely agree that we should own our own and have our own, and we should absolutely be militant. I don't see the point of protest. I always say protests are good for white women. They do nothing. We are not in the civil rights era anymore. That's what are protests doing for us these days? Nothing.
Okay. Queen. Rock, what say you?
Well, to I think one of your questions was how can how can we protect ourselves? Gun ownership in our communities is increasing. Um, so we, my default, I have a bias. I think I've been clear about that before, and my bias is we can't solve problems that were created with a European mindset, and we can't solve problems that were created through organized behavior, with the same mindset and through individualism. That's just not going to happen. Um, and that's not an opinion. I mean, we have history that is already showing us that. So, first of all, the consciousness has to shift. We and second of all, we have to organize ourselves. So, yeah, can we protect our communities? Of course, we can. We for all of us that are buying firearms, I suspect many of us are joining gun clubs. The chief among those gun clubs is the National African American Gun Association, NAGA. Um, is NAGA doing a great job um, training new gun owners on firearm safety and things like that? I would say yes. I'm a member of NAGA, and I don't even own my firearm yet. And I'm a member of two uh, gun clubs. So yeah, I think the Kwame Ture taught me that the unconscious are going to always mobilize, but they're going to mobilize unconsciously, and they're going to organize unconsciously. That's just going to be that's a natural reaction to conflict in our communities. So that's going to happen. We will there will be communities that are going to mobilize and organize with unconscious political behavior. Uh, but what will also have to happen is those of us who have organizational experience to help the unconscious recognize their unconscious behavior and organize those people consciously, and that's going to happen too. So I think the concern about whether we will be able to protect our communities is I wouldn't say it's unreasonable, but I would say that that the narrative is not so much whether we will; it's a matter of how we will do it, and more importantly, it's a matter of developing a narrative, a consistent narrative of the importance of doing so with an African centered consciousness and with with an organized consciousness. Individualism is not going to save us at all.
Facts.
Facts, big facts.
So I do want to jump in real quick because Deantrice, did I say it right?
I'm
All right,
impressed.
awesome. She said something amazing that I really wanted to add some context, some numbers context to. She basically said, "No one is replacing you; you're doing it to yourself." And so let's look at some numbers that really kind of I missed the first part. So if we did this in the first part, y'all just gonna have to work with me because I missed that. Um, from 1999 to 2016, the number of white births in this country fell by 10.6%, while the number of white deaths increased by 9.2%. As of 2022, more white people are dying than are being born. What that means is it is attrition. You're basically losing your numerical advantage through attrition, but it is not because of something someone external is doing. You literally are not having enough babies to replace those of you who have largely been alive for the last 50, 60, almost 70 something years. So when she speaks about the fact that it is not something externally that's happening, but really something that they it, but it but really something that is an internal issue on their side of the equation, those are the numbers. That's what the statistics, the numbers say. The problem is, in typical fashion, when a racist with an agenda has decided that they don't like what is happening, they look for a scapegoat rather than taking accountability. And I think that that has to be part of this discussion, the understanding that it's no one's taking anything from you so much as you've decided that you are not going to participate in reproduction, and instead you're going to blame others for a numerical disadvantage you find yourselves at.
And let me just say this, I live in Texas, which is just I have a love-hate relationship with my state. And a lot of people are rightfully upset about the Roe versus Wade being overturned. And a lot of red states had the trigger laws in effect. And I was telling people, I was like, well, they're doing that because of the white babies that's being aborted. Really has nothing to do with anybody else, but that they are like, no, if y'all get pregnant, I don't care what situation you're in,
You
what
have to have that baby.
you're gonna have that baby. And it's so unfortunate because I always say the senators who have mistresses whose mistresses get pregnant will send them to states where it is legal to get it done. But they are so it's we know we have Ted Cruz here. Gotta love Ted Cruz. He is Hispanic. He is Hispanic, and but he fights hard for the white race, and he only claims his Spanish culture or Hispanic culture when it is
For
time for
votes.
voting. After that, but every law that he helps push, it hinders his own race and pushes the white race. So you have all these laws now and these abortion clinics that have shut down, and they've even shut down like Planned Parenthood is completely shut down. Like those were places people could go for contraception and helping plan your families. But because they've placed them as only places you can get abortions now, they've just shut them down completely. So now you have all of these people who are literally going to different places to have abortions because they don't want to have kids in this economy in the state of America that it's in. And to be fair, white people ain't having babies the same reason most people ain't having babies. They can't afford them. Like it's too
I
expensive.
I'm a I don't want to be that guy, but I'm gonna push back. I don't believe that's it. I
Well,
believe they don't like having sex with each other.
that could be. I don't never
So let
person
me
say
let me
that.
let me let me interject here because I don't want to as much focus on their reasoning as much as I want to focus on what's going to empower us. And I've heard a theme in your discussions uh, of mindset, shift of mindset, consciousness. Um, and I also, like you, Daniel, caught that remark from DeAndres about they're doing it to themselves. And the question that came from there for me automatically is, are we also doing that to ourselves? Are we participating in that? Something to discuss. And then gun ownership, which that because this is an issue, we're being attacked by mass shooters.
Yes.
So there was uh, Mark. When I was listening to you guys, Marcus Garvey kind of came into mind. So I looked up some quotes,
Well, it is Black August, and he was born this month.
He was.
That he was.
that's right. He's a fellow Leo. I just had a birthday myself last week. So
Oh
Oh,
man, mine was
baby,
Sunday.
y'all.
all right. Black August. All right now, I'm going to remember that. So here's the I saw two things. So I'm going to read a couple of things from you. It is your mind that rules the body. You cannot go further than that mind to seek truth and to know truth and to react to truth. And being a therapist, I really resonate with that because my theoretical orientation is cognitive behavioral theory. as a man thinketh.
So shall he be.
And then there's an additional quote or passage that he says, and I feel this is really relevant to our collective status in life right now as a racially demographic black community. You at this time can only be destroyed by yourselves from within and not from without. You have reached the point where the victory is to be won from within and can only be lost from within. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
It's easy to focus on what we're seeing others actively do.
Yeah.
And when you're in a competition, when you're focusing on the other guy that you're competing against, you're losing. And often, as you were saying earlier, Dontres, protest is a form of focusing on the other guy. And we love to protest. Look at what they're doing. You all need to stop doing what you're doing. Not that it's wrong, but is it effective?
Well, I know this isn't what what this particular episode is about, in terms of protests and different forms of organizing, but I hear that narrative a lot about protests, and I think one of the reasons why many of us have a sour taste in our mouths about protests is because too few of us have taken courses on grassroots organizing in the different ways in which to organize and mobilize, in the different ways to show uh, group solidarity and group power. And pro- uh, protest is one of those ways, but it just has to be done in a specific manner. And the manner in which many of us are seeing protests done is not the manner in which it should be done in order to exercise power. So I'm not one of those people who believes that that protests shouldn't be a part of an organized structure and an organized movement. I will say this though. Um, Many of these narratives, and I don't want to like belabor the point, but many of these narratives are narratives that come from a European mindset, a European worldview, and a European consciousness. So I would like, if as best as I can, to encourage us to keep that in mind. We see a lot of these protests that we're talking about are protests that are funded and organized by white people. Those protests are not intended to give us power. So of course they're not going to achieve the results that we want them to achieve, because if they're funded by white people, they are and they're structured and organized by white people, then the intent is to advance the interests of white people. That is not the intent to advance our interests at all, and it never will. There will never be a time that white people will organize any form of protest or mobilization to advance our interests.
Okay, so I think it's very relevant what you brought up, especially as it pertains to protest, because that's a new perspective for me. That maybe it's not so much protest itself as we're not implementing or exercising protests in an effective or correct manner, and that's probably due to the Eurocentric mindset that we
Right.
all operate from. And if you operate from a black identity, as we've discussed in previous shows, you're operating from a Eurocentric mindset.
Yeah.
automatically. And in the Eurocentric mindset, one color's on top, one color's on bottom.
Right.
And that's where the cognitive dissonance risk, because we are operating from a Eurocentric created identity of black, insisting that white identity give us equal billing.
Right.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Okay, tell me where you see.
I understand the intellectual statement that you made, but I also understand that when I log off of here and go out that door and get into my car and drive somewhere at night, and if I drive past somebody in law enforcement, there is a systemic issue at play as well. Regardless of how I identify, there is a systemic reality that I also have to operate and exist within. And so I think that it's not so much an identity as it is the reality of the system that we exist within, right? I would love to say that I am African or I am of the diaspora, because I am. But I also understand that the color of my skin, regardless of how I identify, is what people see first and are most threatened by when they encounter me in public spaces. And I think a lot of what we're doing is based from that perspective, not so much who we identify as, but the reality that we face. And sometimes I think it's necessary to make that nuance. It's a small distinction, but it makes a significant difference when you walk in the world.
So I hear you, but I'm still waiting to hear what the disagreement is.
I don't think it's that we identify that way.
So you missed that was a tongue in cheek question.
Got it.
In other words, everything you just said is correct. That the reality is still there. That's not uh, that is not in conflict with the intellectual awareness of what that identity is and where that's important. And again, I think this is where it relates to the quote that I dug up from Marcus Garvey. Mm-hmm. Looking at black the way you just framed it is looking at the outside. Our answer rests on the inside. It doesn't depend on how others perceive us or what they think of us or what they're going to do regardless of whatever we do. It doesn't depend on that. Once we take the power within us, what they do becomes less and less relevant. The way that you framed it now, and as accurate and true as it is, when you get into that, you have just released your power into the powers that be. So for example, it can be just as simple as, in your scenario with the police stop. That thinking induces a lot of fear-based response for the person who's being stopped, which then can cause him or her to react in a way that brings the very thing they don't want to experience right
into manifestation, right?
Because the fear is already in there. And now you are going to pretty much precipitate that out of expectation of this is what I've always experienced, and do something that actually exacerbates the thing that you didn't want to happen.
Well, I won't agree with that, because my husband and I have been in that situation, and he was respectful. We had honestly just come home. Well, moved back to the States from Korea. We were in our rental vehicle going to our new duty station, and we got pulled over by 8 police cars. He was respectful. He did not talk back. He did everything. They still drug my husband out the car, threw him in the street, and handcuffed him, and had him on the ground with their knees in his back. He did nothing wrong. He was always on the stance of, as a military man, I'm gonna follow the law. I'm gonna do what they say. So it's not always that you're putting that fear in there. That's just how they are. It's nothing we can do to change that, because I've always said you can't force people to change. They have to want to change for themselves. So if you have these overzealous law enforcement people who want to treat every black person like a criminal, and we weren't even doing anything. They said they pulled him over because he looked like somebody who they wanted, even though we showed them our plane tickets that we had just gotten off a 24-hour flight from Seoul, Korea. It didn't matter. So you're going to have those people who are going to do it regardless, no matter, even if you follow the law. I just saw a video the other day of a cop in Florida who pulled over a pregnant woman who followed the law of Florida, that if you don't feel safe where you are, slow down, put on your hazards, and go to a safe place before you pull over. That cop still pulled a gun on her.
Okay,
Huh?
so I'm not. I still am having a hard time hearing where the disagreement is,
Because you just said that when you say stuff the way he says it, it instills a fear in you, and now you're going to react in a way to make that, and that's going to have the outcome, if I've listened to you correctly, that's going to make the outcome of what you feared happening actually happen. You can have people who actually follow the law and do exactly what they say, and it's still going to happen because that person on the other end wants that kind of smoke. They want that to happen.
Yeah, and again, I don't think that's in conflict. I agree with you. You can still do it all right.
Okay.
And it goes wrong. However, are you saying that it's not possible, that the fear that some of us...
No, I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm simply saying I don't think it's one or the other. I think they can both be true at the same time.
I agree.
Okay.
So, again, I don't think that that's really a disagreement. I think
I thought you were saying that no, that's not the case.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that the black identity is still a fear-based identity. Even when you say he did everything right, that is a code word for us, that we have to make sure we do it all right. Whereas if you're in the racially mainstream group, you can be oblivious to, disrespectful to the officer, and things statistically are going to work out in your favor because it's a different dynamic. You can do it all wrong with the right skin color and come out okay, and do everything correctly with the wrong skin color, and no matter what you do, statistically speaking, things go different. Mm-hmm. What I'm getting to, or trying to allude to, is the fight is within. The solution, the process is an internal process, and everybody here so far has, in their assessment, has alluded to mindset, to a shift of thinking, and it has to begin, and especially where Brother Rock said, this Eurocentric framework that most of us are operating under.
Yeah, I think that I don't get a lot of pushback on the European consciousness narrative that I consistently put out there, because I have it, right. I still have a European. I was born here. I went through 12 years of schooling, which was all European. It is presented as though it's universal, but there's nothing universal about the schooling that I received. It was European, but what I'm also, I guess what I'm saying is that I do intentionally and deliberately work towards decolonizing my mind. At best, I'll have two consciousness. I'll have the European consciousness so that I can identify it when I see it, and I'll have an African-centered consciousness that I can use to replace that void. But when it comes to this theory about the great replacement, what I'm saying is if we continue to discuss it and debate it, if you will, not just here, but just because I've seen other discussions about it. If we continue to approach it using their consciousness, then we're not solving the problem. All we're doing is quibbling or treadmilling, right? and I don't know that it's really, and I guess I really shouldn't even say solving the problem. Well, let me clarify what I mean when I say solving the problem, because I'm not interested in solving the population problem for white people at all. As not, it's not
Not
even on
while we here.
my, yeah, it's not on my list of
Not my
concerns.
fight to fight.
Yeah, that's um, there's 16% of the population globally, so it doesn't matter how many baby. They could triple the number of babies that they're having here in the United States. They will still be the global minority as
Yep.
they have always been. There's never been a time in the history of this planet where white people have been the global majority, ever. They've never been the global majority, and they never will be the global majority.
And they know this.
Right. So the replacement theory that I find that many of us talk about is too restricted to the United States. Uh, and I think with an African centered consciousness, we will consciously, intentionally, and deliberately expand the scope of that discussion and talk about it from a global perspective. From a global perspective, yes, they are being replaced, but they have always been uh, subject to replacement. That's why they are only 16% of the global population, and in some 25 to 30 years, Nigeria is going to be one of the third largest populations in the world.
So your assessment right there kind of gets us into the second question. And the second question being, is the black community ready to take measures to protect themselves? If not, why?
Not the European minded black
So
community.
let me one thing I think that our community has that's frustrating. We have this need to have a leader, right? Somebody has to lead us to where we need to be. And every leader that has ever come across has had some kind of mess with them. For instance, I am literally blocked to this day by Sean King, because I question everything about him. And I always question people who, after you research, because I've never wanted to follow somebody blindly. So after I research you and your story doesn't add up about what you would say you come from, I'm going to question you. I'm going to seriously ask you questions, because I feel like if you're going to put yourself out there as a leader of our people to help us, become better and to get past all of our issues, then the story that you put out there about yourself should be honest, right? So then you get people like Sean Kings and the people over BLM and whatever other organizations out there, who then you find out that they're scamming, or they're lying, or they're not who they say they are. And so then you have this dishonesty that's flowing through, and people say they don't trust them, but then there's nobody else standing up for that, because everybody feels like we have to have a leader. I don't think we have to have a leader. I think we all just need to come together and mobilize. I think
So Don Chris, is the black community ready to mobilize?
I don't think so. I don't think the black community is ready to mobilize. I don't think so. I think we're inherently selfish when it comes to what we want individually. And those of us who are ready, it's not enough of us, because you're always going to have those who don't succeed, think we're okay, or are too scared to do it.
Daniel, do you concur with Dan Ferris?
I concur with the overall assessment. I will add, I think a huge part of the issue is that we are we are fighting this battle on their turf and on their terms. How do you defeat an enemy when you've accepted the rules of engagement that they are the ones who
Oh,
are the ones that
Yep.
that put on the table?
would you repeat that, brother?
Please.
Certainly. How do you defeat an enemy when you're the one when you accept the rules of engagement that they establish? The perfect example, and this, I'm taking it back to bring it back to here. Nat Turner was considered a murderer because he killed not only the wife but also the children of the master that owned him. However, that overlooks the fact that when his master died, either the wife or the child would have taken over ownership of the slaves, right? So when you speak about freedom and then you establish these parameters where you say you cannot kill ours, but it's okay when we kill yours, and then that becomes the paradigm and the rules of engagement always. You can't fight, and it's you're basically fighting the battle with one arm behind your back is basically what's happening.
That was a mic drop right there.
I like that.
That was a mic drop. Rob?
Well, I think you know what my answer is. Of course, I think the Black community is ready, but I think that, you know, when we paint with broad strokes like that, when we go the Black community, I think that once again, you know, disrespect, but that's a narrative that I think we probably need to tweak that narrative a little bit. We have
What's a better way to frame it? More
well,
accurate. Also more accurate and empowering way to frame that.
well, I don't know, but I think having the discussion, through the discussion, we'll come up with a way. The Black community as a whole is not ready to do a lot of things, right? But it's the subsets within the Black community. The gun owners in the Black community. Are they ready? I believe so. I believe that the gun owners are ready to protect the community. It's the members. Are there members of the Nation of Islam that are ready to protect their community? Of course, I believe they are. Are there members of the new Black Panther Party that are ready? Yes, certainly I believe that. Are there members of the Black Guerrilla Army ready to do that? Of course, but if you don't have the mindset, um, first of all, if you don't belong to an organization, you're not thinking about organizing. So let's just start there. You have to be thinking about organizing and be a member of an organization and appreciate the advantages of being a member of an organization in order to see the advantages of organizing, right? So a lot of times when we're having these discussions, you know, one of my questions that I often ask people is, what organization do you belong to that's solving the problem that you're concerned about in your community, right? If you don't belong to an organization that's solving any of the problems that you are concerned about in your community, then of course your answer is going to be to problems, to issues of the Black community, is going to be answers that advance the interests of white people. Our responses advance their interests. We have to be members of organization.
So from I hear exactly what you're saying. For lack of a better term, I use the term the Black community because it may not accurately describe who we really are, but because the outcomes come down along lines of color, to me that is the most accurate term until I come across a better one. But
I get what you're saying. I'm not using this platform to correct you. I'm just saying when we paint with broad strokes, I think that we could benefit greatly from understanding that it's not, there's never going to be a time when the whole Black community comes together in a kumbaya to solve any of the ills that are facing our community. And it never has happened that way. There's never been a time in history where that has happened. It's always been the minority who has been that ran up the hill to take the arrows and the shots for everybody else to benefit from. The Black Panther Party was the minority in their community. SNCC and the members of SNCC were the minority in their community. Members of the SCLC are with a minority in their communities. So, and that's how it's always going to be. There's never going to be the majority of people that are going to run interference to and organize to solve problems for the for the majority of the, well, it's going to be the minority of the people. The majority of the people are not going to do it, but they'll benefit from it. So I think what I'm saying to you is, yes, it can happen, but it's going to happen on the backs of the smaller groups of people in the Black community who belong to organized movements.
But here's the problem with the organized movements. I have yet to see one that actually works. That
Well,
actually,
are you a member of one?
as of now, no, because the one I was a member of disbanded because of, what's the word I'm looking for? Doing things I guess they weren't supposed to do with money raised. You get what I'm saying, and whatnot. And it it's disheartening because you find out that, we're raising this money, we're trying to mobilize the community, and then you find out the people over it are using the money for other things. I'm not talking about BLM, that's something else, but it really it's I've seen more organizations that are a lot of fluff and talk, and they're good at raising the money, but nothing really comes of it. And the money doesn't go, or even just individuals. Here in Houston, we have what's his name, Quanell X, who is a big promoter of helping the Black community, and it's just come out that in a report that all of the money he has raised for families to help them, they've never received. And he's somebody in our community that is held in Houston as, a leader who gets stuff done for Black people, who makes a change. And now the families are speaking out saying, we've held on to it long enough, but everything, it's disheartening. So what do you do? I get what you're saying, that it's going to take the organizations, but it's hard to have faith in organizations when the majority of them are crooked.
Well, okay, and I respect that, but it's not hard for me to have faith in organized movements when organized movements are the reason why we have the liberties and freedoms we have today. I'll give you a perfect example. Now, of course, are there people out there that start up things and they don't have good character, they don't have good principles? Yes, of course. NAGA. His organization has 48,000 members nationwide, he said, and has gained more than 1,000 or more each month since 2020. It has nearly 107,000 followers on Facebook. That's the National African American Gun Association. This is an organized movement that is doing the exact opposite of what you are saying to me right now.
I didn't say all of them. I said the majority of them. What a few organizations compared to, to be frank, there are a lot of organizations out there. I'm not saying all of them are like that, but
Right.
the ones that we see the most of, because here's the thing, you have to remember, they aren't paying attention to the ones you don't hear a lot about. They're paying attention to the ones that are in the media. And that's also a problem because a lot of people don't know about NAGA.
All right, so let me interject you. I think this is an excellent example that displays the point of the second question. Is our community ready to protect itself? And just this type of discussion, all valid points in areas that need to be fully addressed and thought out. But the point that we're here, we're still talking, and we're not really in a position to protect ourselves. Even if we broke it down to subsets or subgroups, like what happened in Buffalo, I wonder, has the Black members of that community crafted a strategy for future attacks?
Well, let me just say this. If you're a member of NAGA, or if you're a member of the Huey P. Newton Gun Club, or if you're a member of the Nat Turner Gun Club, or any gun club that is that exists and that has existed and shown success in organizing, then of course you just pick up the phone and you call another member of the organization and you go, listen, we need to do something. We need to do something to protect our community. That's the reason why you have to be a member of an organization.
Are we
So,
seeing
yeah.
Are we seeing any evidence of that behavior happening in a way that we recognize that it's occurring?
Well, yeah, there's evidence of militias mobilizing and organizing. We saw evidence of that in the I think it was the Ahmaud Arbery situation where the militia showed up. I mean, there are examples of that, but they were all gun owners and they were all organized. That wasn't a bunch of individuals that just caught each other and wound up there by accident. That was an organized movement. So if we're going to talk about um, whether the Black community is willing, if the desire is there, yeah, the desire is there for people in our communities to protect our communities. That's why gun ownership is going up, and that's why the evidence is also showing that membership in Black gun organizations is also increasing. It's not decreasing, it's not flat, it's increasing. That's a clue.
Well, I agree that, I mean, but desire and actually being ready are two different things. I
Well,
mean, we own 12, we have 12
if you
guns
have
in
a
the house.
gun and you're a member of an organized movement and you organize, those are the part of, I think those are, if there are 5 things that need to be done, those are 3 out of 5 right there.
I understand, but what I'm saying is, because you said the desire is there, desire and actual action, being ready for actual action, are two different things. We can desire things all day, but is our community as a whole ready? No, we aren't. And I'll stand 10 toes down on that. We are
Well,
not ready.
I'm
We
not
are an
disagreeing with
active
you.
gun carrying, toting house.
But I'm not disagreeing with you on that as a whole. That's what again, when we say as a whole, we're going back to painting with broad strokes. That's why I continue to say as a whole, no. But there are conclaves within the Black community that's ready, just like it has happened in the past. The whole Black community wasn't ready to stand up against police brutality when the Black Panther Party said, hell no, we're going to organize and we're going to mobilize and we're going to put it into this. The whole Black community wasn't ready for that. But the Black Panther Party did something about it. They organized and solved the problem. The whole Black community wasn't ready to feed poor Black children in the Black community. They weren't ready for that, because if they were ready, they would have been doing it. They weren't doing it. You know who did it? The Black Panther Party.
I mean, I know all of that. I'm simply answering the question that he proposed. He didn't say were certain sectors of the Black community prepared to do something about it. He said, is the Black community. So I'm going to take that at face value from what he said. And he didn't say, if he had said certain sectors, then I would say, well, yes, certain organizations are absolutely ready. But we as Black people, we could actually do more in greater numbers than we can in smaller ones. Because yes, you had the organization that stood up with Ahmaud Arbery, and yes, we had the Black Panther Party, but outside integration and a few other, advances, we have not improved much at all.
So let's bring it back. Just revisit this. I know we're coming on the tail end, and there's so much to mine here. We may need to do a multi-part series on this because listen, this great replacement theory is not going anywhere. Matter of fact, it's getting stronger, and we need to have a consciousness, especially when Orange gets back in office in 2024.
Right, I agree.
Yes,
but my question to you about that is, it still remains the discussion about the great replacement theory. Is it advancing their interests? In other words, how does it advance our interests to discuss how many babies they're having or not? Because that doesn't, to me, that's a discussion, but it doesn't really advance our issue. It doesn't really solve problems for us.
I'm focusing in one area: self-defense.
Right.
Self-defense.
Because with the great replacement theory, you have all of these racist zealots out here shooting us up, and killing us because they're afraid that we're going to take over.
Right.
Because they're afraid that we're going to be the minority.
So protection is not just guns. Protection still comes in the place of organizing. How else do you organize? You organize people who are involved in private investigation. You organize people who are willing to go into these chat rooms and monitor chatter and monitor aberrant behavior by white people. I mean, a lot of these jokers that are shooting up the white community, they're sitting they're on the internet right now talking shit and bragging right now. So we need to be organized so that we're monitoring their behavior. We're monitoring their websites. We're monitoring their social media campaigns. We're monitoring the FBI chatter. So it still comes down to organized activity.
I mean, I've done that before. I've literally created a Facebook page, put a white man on my page, snuck into their groups. I've actually taken over a few groups. Some of my friends, we have literally taken over a few groups. I've come in, made them think I was one of them, become an admin, and just took over their groups. I've done that plenty of times. I actually enjoy doing that.
Well, so we're saying the same thing.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with anything you're saying. I just think I'm thinking of a more broader picture per se. Because after living in different countries and stuff, you kind of see how Black communities do. I will say this: Black communities in other countries that aren't Black mobilize heavily.
But even those that mobilize heavily in other countries, those people are still 9 times out of 10, they're still a part of the minority of that community.
Well, yes, but my point is, it's, how can I put it? They're better organized than other, and maybe it's because it's a smaller, more gatekeep community overseas. Like, it's the African community in Seoul, Korea is large for that community, but it's not, you get what I'm saying? But it's not bigger than, say, the Italian community in Seoul, Korea.
Here's what I think that is. I think that is a fact. It's more likely that you're going to have more collectivity in overseas African members.
Yes.
Because they connect outside of the racial paradigm. They can still recognize Black, but before Black, they were these other cultural, tribal identities.
Yes.
That are rich and deep and historic and empowering. There's nothing empowering about Black, but if you're a Yoruba, Igbo,
right?
I mean, that's power.
Hausa, Akan, yeah. I agree.
I agree.
So they can, that culture is a resiliency factor against the racial ideology.
Right.
So even though they might have been discriminated against, even though they may have been stopped unfairly, like what happens here, they have a resiliency within them that says, you know, I know you're going to see me Black. I really don't care.
I know my friend that's from Lagos, she said that she didn't know that she was Black until she came to America.
Right.
And she was like, she said, I had no idea that was a thing. She was like, she was like, and I was
but
like,
we got to always look back at the root. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Finish. Sorry.
Yeah, she said, I didn't know that I was Black until I came to America. But me and her had a very healthy talk about, you know, the elitism that comes from Africans who come to America. And she said, you know, for the longest, she felt that she was better than Black Americans because she was straight from Africa. But she said, but, you know, you get here. And she says, even when her parents came over here, eventually she had to sit them down and say, look, nobody in America cares that you're from Lagos. When you get here, you are a Black American living here. Your Lagos means nothing here. You are just like everybody else. And so I don't know, have y'all ever been on Clubhouse?
I have.
So yeah, Clubhouse is a mess, but it's a big diaspora group of Africans on there who wanted to make a case of how they should be treated differently than Black Americans. And I remember one guy came in and he was from somewhere in Egypt. And he said, you know, I really want everybody to sit back and remember that once you come to America and you agree to be over here and you're making money over here, you're not going to be treated as though you're somebody elite just because you're from Africa. Nobody cares about that, because at the end of the day, everybody that's not Black is looking at you as a threat. It doesn't matter that you're from Lagos. It doesn't matter that you're from Ghana. It doesn't matter that you're from Johannesburg or wherever, Mozambique, Djibouti. It doesn't matter. Over here, you're just Black and you're a threat. So instead of us arguing about who's more elite than each other, we need to stick together. And I think that's also an issue in our community, because you have others who think they're more elite or better, or somebody's under you, and they don't want to mobilize with you because they believe that they're at a higher, it's so many microaggressions in our own community that hinder us.
Right. So,
what's also hindering us is we're not organized. And I hate to keep beating that drum, but it has to be. Organized activity is the solution, and it always has been the solution. You cannot give me an example of any problem that has existed in our community that was solved other than through organized activity.
And organized activity, because people love to say I'm more Malcolm than Martin, and I was like, well, if you really pay attention to the end of Martin's life, he was agreeing more with Malcolm.
He was much more Malcolm,
because he realized that his turn the other cheek philosophy was BS. And love, and so I was like, they both served their purposes, and we lost both of them too soon. But I think. And I'm not necessarily saying we don't need a leader. I think that maybe instead of everybody focusing on trying to find one good leader to lead us, we just as a group, you get what I'm saying? We can mobilize together. You can have people at the forefront of it. But I think our main problem is we find somebody who does one or two great things for the community, and suddenly they are the face of that fight. And it's like, no, because the minute that person falls, the minute that person does something that is deemed, you get what I'm saying? Then it makes the whole movement look like a sham.
Right. I think what you're addressing is charisma-based leadership versus organized leadership.
Yes. And most leadership is charisma-based.
Okay, look. Obviously, we haven't even scratched the surface. Definitely. But what we do know is that as it stands now, if we're ready, it's in very small pockets.
Right.
It's not collective at all. There might be, and we need a collective response. So we need to come back and continue this, because as I said, this theory, great replacement theory, is getting stronger.
Right.
And without having a proactive strategy, we are really risking our livelihoods and even having more of a setback than we can even imagine right now. So before we go, what I'd like to do is let me sum up a couple of things. I think we agree that it's a mindset issue. I think we agree that it's an organizational issue. And I think we agree that there's a difference between our racial thinking and cultural thinking.
Yes.
Okay. And I love the idea, like we were starting to get a little creative. Now, this next time we discuss it, I want to be more creative, because I love Don Trace's suggestion of subterfuge, infiltrating. These are things that it's happening to us on a regular.
Right.
Y'all, it's fun. You should do it. It's fun.
These are things that we really need to figure it out more and be on the creative side and start really making this relevant to our situation.
Right.
But before we go, what I like to do is the strongest component that came out was the recognition of this Eurocentric mindset shifting out of that. So I'd like to challenge each of you to leave the listeners today tonight with a suggestion on how to start clearing the Eurocentric components from your mindset. And this time I go backwards. We'll start with Rob.
Well, I think the first step towards decolonizing your mind is acknowledging that your mind has been colonized. That's most important, is to accept that you have a colonized mind. I'm not pleased about it, but I've accepted that my mind is colonized, and then I do intentional and deliberate work to decolonize my mind. I do deliberate and intentional work to replace certain words and certain narratives and belief systems with an African-centered approach to it.
So recognize and be aware that you have been affected by Eurocentric impact and work to begin decolonizing.
Yes.
Okay. Daniel.
So I won't repeat everything Rock said. I think that's a great start, and I think that right after that, it's then about finding a tribe. Who are the people that have similar mindsets, who are on similar paths, who are looking to not just decolonize their mindset, but also to organize and actually start being proactive in the fact that we will always be a target, because no matter what happens, the color of her skin is our uniform first and foremost. So first, start with where Rock started, decolonizing your mindset, accepting that your mindset has been colonized, working to decolonize it, and then follow up with, now you start organizing by finding people that are part of your tribe, and then building a proactive plan of approach with those people.
Love it. We'll end with brains and beauty.
I'm gonna to capitalize on that, I'm gonna say educate. A lot of this deserves education, not just of learning what your tribe is and whatnot, but also going back and educating yourself on your roots. And that's a good way to start getting yourself out of that Eurocentric mindset. If you start learn what African tribe you came from, learn the ways of your culture that your roots. When you're researching your family tree, you're gonna see some Europeans on there, but push past that and go to the part which shows you where your lineage really comes from and build from there. Because if you learn where your lineage really comes from, then you can learn their ways and their beliefs and everything about it. And then that's when you can mobilize, you can organize, you can find your tribe, because then you'll know where you belong.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it.
I love
Good
both
stuff, guys. Good stuff. These are good, empowering suggestions that you're bringing up here. And that's this is the side of the conversation we need to be on, to start strengthening ourselves and giving us the wherewithal up here to begin to attack this problem. There's not just one singular way to the solution. It's going to require all of us. So my contribution, I'm going to read another quote from Marcus Garvey. We're going to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. For though others may free the body, none but ourselves can free the mind. Mind is our only ruler. The man who is not able to develop and use his mind is bound to be the slave of the other man who uses his mind, because man is related to man under all circumstances, for good or ill. Marcus Garvey, 1937.
All praise to Marcus Garvey.
The godfather of Pan-Africanism.
Yes.
So, hey, it's been a really good discussion, and I hope our producer lets us continue this. I love this panel. Don Trace, you are awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I really enjoyed this. I was a little nervous because I was the only woman on the panel, but this was fun.
You handle your own. You handle your own.
You did. I agree.
Because you got two strong lines over here. Two strong
To be
lines.
fair, I was on the debate team at Texas Southern. So.
All right. So, hey, thank you, Rock. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Don Craig.
Thank you.
Thank you, listeners and viewers and watchers. Have a great week. And until the next time we meet, let's make a point to meet in the black space.
Yes.
Appreciate that, brother.
So,
Peace and blessings, y'all.
peace and blessings.
Blessings.